Good evening, good night, and good morning to everyone. This is update for May 28, 2022, day 94 of the war. So today we're going to touch on two general topics. One is update on Orlan 10, Russian UAV that supports Russian artillery and turns Russian artillery in pretty deadly power on the battlefield, and one of the reasons why Ukrainian army is not able to do successful offensives so far. Not the only one, just want to make sure, but one of the most important ones. So then we're going to look at Ukrainian situation in Ukrainian economy, and then we're going to do walks through the front line. In terms of the front line, there are not really major updates in terms of changes in the front line, except we have more information on their Ukrainian attack on the Kherson bridgehead. We'll provide that once we get there. But let's start with Orlan 10 UAV. So there was... So if you look, there were a lot of sort of laughter, and people were laughing when they found out that Orlan has just regular camera. This is Orlan shot down sometime in March of this year, and as you can see, this is how it used to be. This is sort of where the camera is at the bottom. So at the same time, even it had the camera, just sounds like a pretty simple tool, but that's more than enough to successfully correct artillery fire. Nevertheless, Russian army decided to go a little bit further, and there was another Orlan 10 that was shot down sometime in May, and it was manufactured in February of 2022. So as you can see, they replaced the area where there's just simple, like DSLR camera or whatever the camera it is. They replaced it with a thermal imaging camera. So this camera is much better. Essentially, it's a high contrast, and you can see the specification. This is not the camera manufacturer, but basically the key component is this thermal imaging matrix, which is here on this chip. So you can see this is manufactured by French company called Lyman. And you can look at the specifications. It's pretty good. It's a sharp contrast, good for detecting fast moving objects. That's what was, difficult in general. And for example, Cube, that I forgot to mention yesterday, that one of the biggest problems with Cube, that it's essentially unable to attack moving targets. So, the target has to be more or less stationary. So for Cube to successfully attack the target. So this is quite significant improvement here. And another important part, and for those who followed and listened, you remember that we mentioned that Orlan was essentially unable to detect humans. So now they have that ability. As you can see, they have 50 millimeter lens here. So and based on specifications from Lyman, that means that they are able to detect humans roughly at 450 meters altitude, which it's not perfect because 450 is a little bit kind of too low. It can be relatively easily shot down. Nevertheless, now there is it's growing in its capabilities. So this is quite significant upgrade to Orlan 10 that makes it even much more deadlier than it used to be. There is also at the same time, which is kind of funny, there is downgrade to it as well. So as you can see, there is this kind of like a chip and the printed circuit board. So this was responsible for navigation of Orlan without using GPS. So basically, the advantage of Orlan that you cannot spoof GPS. So it basically resistant to most type of attacks with anti-drone guns or anything like that. It's not gonna, because how the anti-drone gun works, it's basically spoofing GPS coordinates, and so then the UAV kind of doesn't know where to go, and then depending on the sort of programming, it either returns back to where it came from or just simply drops that. There are many sort of passes how it all plays out. They're really dependent on the sort of manufacturer. So they built in Russian sort of developers built pretty clever approach so that you cannot really spoof it essentially, and so it kind of continues flying no matter what by actually using basically optical information from the ground. So that was another very strong advantage of Orlan 10. So basically it's very resistant to any kind of anti-drone sort of guns or any kind of attempts to spoof it with GPS coordinates. So now what happened is actually got downgraded. Apparently, Russian industry is not capable of producing this chip with PCB, this basically module. So it replaced it with very primitive GPS-driven module. So now it is actually susceptible to attacks from anti-drone guns and just general attacks like GPS spoofing attacks. So at the same time, it's kind of like on one hand, it's becoming more deadlier, and on the other hand, it's easier to basically shoot it down at this point. So that's probably a result of sanctions. We're not sure. Maybe this was just some generally like lack of inventory, because there is a lack of chips in general in the world. So it's not clear what's the reason for it, but that's definitely a downgrade in the whole system. Now let's actually switch and look what's going on with Ukrainian economy. And Ukrainian economy is in free fall, as we said it before, and we just want to mention it again. So Ukrainian government debt was reduced. The rating was reduced to CCC plus by S&P. So this really means that the country, it's basically recognition of international investors that a country is on the path to default on its debt, and which very logical. We discussed that revenue about like a month or so, that revenues, the tax revenues are dropping very fast, and they probably will be about very low in June, probably 20-30% of what they used to be basically pre-war. So it essentially prevents Ukrainian government from functioning without foreign financial support, and we discussed in that video all of the details. And so essentially at this point, Ukrainian economy is on total support. And even the question of Ukrainian government ability to pay, its obligation inside of the country. So unless there is a foreign support, there is no ability to do that. So that's a situation with Ukrainian economy. Oh, and by the way, in terms of Russian government debt that was supposed to be paid on, we believe, May 27, there was a situation when that Russia could have been forced into default because U.S. Treasury withdrew a special license, which basically prevents Russia from paying on its debt. So basically, Russia wants to pay on its debt, it has money, but ability to pay is essentially severed. And so, but it turns out it looks like it prepaid the money to the intermediary, basically conduit that essentially distributes money to actual investors. But then the problem is that from what it looks like, that conduit is not going to be able to distribute money to investors. So that's kind of like situation in sort of under question. So if that conduit is not able to distribute the money, then technically it's default. But regardless, even if the money gets to investors this time, there is another payment on June 23rd or 24th, which at that point there is no way to prepay. So there is essentially will be technical default at that point. There is another development on the political front. So today, Russian President Putin announced that they are open to negotiations with Ukraine, and there was a similar announcement from Ukrainian President Zelensky saying that military is not the only path, and we need to negotiate. So it looks that situation is getting bad enough on both sides, not only on battlefield but economy-wise, because both economies essentially in very bad situation. Ukrainian is definitely much worse, but regardless, they are in pretty terrible shape, and that forces both political sort of leadership in both countries, represented obviously by presidents, to seek some form of agreement and solution. At this point, it doesn't look that Ukrainian solution is going to be accepted by Russia regardless, because Ukraine insists on the borders, on the territorial integrity of Ukraine, and that's something that Russia cannot really accept, because there will be literally probably revolt there inside of the country. So there is that problem, but at least the both sides declare sort of willingness to negotiate, because all of the negotiations were stopped from about mid-March, somewhere in that ballpark, or end of March actually. End of March. Now let's actually go through do a walk through the front line. We're gonna do it in a clockwise fashion, and we're gonna start from the top. As always, there is this ping pong here along the border. Now Russia claims that Ukrainian artillery fire killed two Russian border guards. So obviously unclear. This is just a claim. We're just sharing information. We don't have ability to sort of confirm or not. Just taking it at face value. Totally possible that that's not, as we discussed last time, there's no reason for Ukrainian side to shell Russian sort of civilian targets, or just basically border patrol or something like that. There's just simply no logic there. But nevertheless, Russia claims that Ukrainian artillery fire killed them. So now let's go look at what's going on around Kharkiv. Situation here is sort of low intensity fighting. No progress by either side. So it just basically status quo was, as we said, low intensity fighting. Let's continue. Let's go down south. Let's look what's going on the Izyum bridgehead and Lyman bridgehead, which essentially destroyed. So this is a schematic, high-level schematic, just to understand the units and the sort of balance of sort of power and forces. So as you can see, most of the bridgehead is now supported by these 4 Russian mechanized brigades. And just a reminder, this brigade is roughly, you can think of it as 4,000 people with tanks, and Russian mechanized brigade are pretty well-organized units. So this is what's the sort of backbone workhorse here. And there are this very kind of like worn out units that had significant casualties that have been there for quite a while, or they were fighting in Kiev East Group. So what happened here is our realization is, because we haven't seen them for a while on the bridgehead, and so what happened there is they were actually transferred to the Popasna area and basically Severodonetsk salient to attack Ukrainian troops there and try to achieve something there. Since Russian side could not sort of achieve anything here, they decided to try other location. So now let's actually look what's sort of more like, let's do zoom in. So this is the Izyum bridgehead. Again, nothing new here. Artillery shelling, small skirmishes, but nothing totally serious. The only area where Russian troops are trying to achieve something is they're trying to attack from a village Pasika towards south to basically, obviously do the same thing and potentially encircle this and force withdrawal of this bridgehead around town Svyatohirsk that Ukrainian army still holds here. There is even still tiny bridgehead here around the village of Stary Karvan in the forest here. So Russian troops are slowly clearing this out. Eventually, they obviously will achieve their goal. It's just basically delaying tactic by Ukrainian army here. Let's keep going. Let's see what's going on at the tip of the Donbass salient, which is, as a reminder for those who are new, this is Donbass salient, and now we're going to look at the Severodonetsk salient. So now the northern part is sort of quiet. There's no attempts for new bridgeheads. Russian troops continuing pressuring Ukrainian defenders in Severodonetsk. As a reminder, the main bridge was destroyed by Russian artillery. There is a second bridge that's semi-destroyed and basically not usable for any heavy equipment. So you cannot bring, let's say, tanks or anything heavy inside here to help. Not to mention that probably at this point there's no even point bringing anything heavy, and tanks are really not suited for the fighting in the towns. So this is really fighting of light infantry, and then what they really need is support from artillery. So that's what's going on here. And then the Russian troops managed to gain small foothold on this kind of northeastern side of the outskirt of the town. We'll actually look in detail there once we get there. Then again, the main attacks for Russian troops were again attempts to break through here near Bilogorivka, Beryslav, without success. Then they attack towards Kamyshovaha here, trying to kind of see if they can at least create encirclement in this area, without success either. So it does feel to us, and maybe it's very preliminary, we could be wrong, but initial assessment is that all of these troops that were here also kind of ran out of power. And there's obviously no guarantee, but so far for 2 days, the intensity of attacks definitely dropped. And from our understanding, most of their sort of battle capable Russian units are already here, or sort of say remnants of those battle capable units are already here, and basically slowly being destroyed, and at the expense of severe destruction of Ukrainian units that are involved here. So we could definitely say that 24th Brigade is basically just remnants left, and the same story goes for the 14th Brigade. These brigades are essentially capable of very limited defensive actions, and probably will be withdrawn after this situation settled, for total refitting, and sort of they totally decimated, let's put this way. But the similar situation, maybe definitely not as bad, but similar situation is happening on Russian side as well. So let's actually look at what's going on in Severodonetsk. So this is basically north, this is east, this is south, this is the river that separates it from Lysychansk. So just again, this is we're looking at Severodonetsk, right? This is the river here. This was kind of north, this is east, this is south. So this is this is where we're looking at. So the Russian troops managed to conquer some hotel here, basically this kind of area, and this area, this is a bus station area, that's what it's called. So they essentially kind of created a bridgehead in the town, foothold. We couldn't say that that's a huge progress, but they're definitely pushing Ukrainian defenders slowly but surely, let's put this way. So this is, and it's probably what's going to happen in our sort of estimate and viewing this whole situation. It's probably going to be slow grind for probably, another couple weeks to squeeze out Ukrainian troops out of Severodonetsk, unless there is decision by Ukrainian command to actually withdraw from here and just evacuate and get on this side. And this is probably will happen only if there is this actual breakthrough here. So there is a very credible threat to Ukrainian troops to be encircled. So that's the only reason we're saying that Severodonetsk can be evacuated. Doesn't feel that Ukrainian command plans to do this right now. And there is also the way it looks right now here. It seems like the front line somewhat stabilized. And so that kind of removes the urgency of action from the Ukrainian command at this point. So let's this is the also kind of closer look at the villages where their sort of front line lies. So as you can see, this is their sort of like the very tip, the most northern tip where Russian troops managed to get. They control majority of village of Nahirna. That's kind of like the most northern part where they get to. But so far, for a couple days, they haven't had any progress. So this is a look at the bigger, sort of like complete look of this whole, we don't even know how to call it, not really salient, but it's kind of like a breakthrough around Popasna area. So as you can see, this part is also stable right now. And we think that was achieved mostly, this whole big success here by Russian troops really was achieved essentially thanks to this Wagner mercenaries, which were totally not they don't outnumber Ukrainian troops, but it was just very clever strategy and tactics of attacking from the flank and from the rear. I mean, it's very obvious, obviously, but not really practiced much by either side, let's put it this way. So there is no progress here as well. So the front line stabilized. It does look kind of very, how to say, edgy, and this looks like Ukrainian salient. That's also could be potentially cut off, but this really doesn't solve any problem for the Russian side, basically. So let's keep going. Let's look at what's going on west of Donetsk. As we discussed this many times, there is attempts to capture Avdiivka, town of Avdiivka, which is important industrial center for Ukraine. And it's the same idea, just trying to force withdrawal of Ukrainian troops by creating kind of like a northern pincer and then southern pincer. But really, there's no really success so far, with exception of this northern pincer that was kind of started to kind of being created, but really nothing happening there. So this is the closer look. This is northern one, and the attempts to attack here to cross this road, and so far Russian troops were not successful in crossing this road here. And then the southern is basically attacked from the area of this is airport, Donetsk International Airport. So they're trying to attack kind of like a northwestern direction from here to kind of create basically potential encirclement here. So beyond that, there's not much going on there. The Zaporizhia front line is also stable and really quiet, with exception of artillery fire. That's very sort of regular there. There's a lot of it. And this is the wedge that the Russian troops created by when they were trying to build southern pincer to encircle Ukrainian troops in Donbass salient. It's been quiet for a really long time at this point. And this is like sort of more like a big picture view of the Zaporizhia front line. As you can see, it's all centered around several strongholds. Now let's keep going to the Kherson bridgehead, because there are actually developments there. It was very quiet, and we were saying that both sides were in balance. Apparently, for whatever reason, Ukrainian command decided to attack here, and they attacked at the village called Davydiv Brid here, and they crossed, and the Ukrainian troops managed to get into Russian-controlled territory for about like 10 kilometers. Let's actually, and then they got stopped, and then very logically, what Russian troops are trying to do, they would like to cut off that push at its base, basically by the river. So that's where they're attacking, trying to cut off these Ukrainian troops here. So far, it's unclear if they are successful or not. They claim that they are. Ukrainian side claims that they are not. We'll find out in the next couple of days. Basically, what this really means, the fighting is still going on. But more important, the whole kind of like a big picture, what this whole thing was trying to achieve. Basically, this was an attempt to kind of actually go all the way here to Nova Kakhovka. There's a road. You don't see it here, but there's a road. So the offensive is happening along that road, essentially. And obviously sort of cut off this group of Russian troops here, which is not much there. And then basically get to this Nova Kakhovka. And this is probably would be sort of big deal from propaganda purposes, because then, there is a hope to probably get here to this channel and basically cut off again fresh water from Crimea. So that's essentially probably sort of like from propaganda perspective, that's really the goal probably. From a military perspective, beyond just simply liberating this chunk of territory and potentially trapping some of these troops, we're not even clear at this point out of these troops what's really left there. There might be just simply screening troops, so there is really not much there. So it's not even clear. Beyond that, it probably won't achieve terribly much, because the question is really the Kherson here, this whole area. That's basically the most important part. Generally, it's still better, sort of, to say that Ukrainian army liberates territory, but it's not a sort of if it's successful, it's not going to be an earth-shattering development. If you look at it just from a military perspective. From propaganda perspective, obviously it will be used, very widely. And so this is the closer look on what's going on here. So Ukrainian troops managed to get across the river, and river is kind of really shallow here. It's nothing really like big, let's put it this way. We can say it's kind of like a stream to extent. So they crossed here, they got into this Davydiv Brid, then they got to the village called Bruskynske, and that's where they got stopped, or they just stopped. We're not clear what's going on here. We don't have full details. All we know is just Russian troops are trying to attack at the base of this breakthrough. And essentially, obviously, the logical point is cut it off, cut supply, and then destroy encircle troops that are out of supply and essentially not able to provide much of the resistance. So this offensive attempt is being done by 35th Naval Infantry Brigade. So now before we had it on Zaporizhzhia front line, but never really seen it except for one. So essentially, this brigade was transferred here. So that's where it is. And actually, it being the other unit that's engaged is 63rd Brigade, and we mentioned this before, that this is newly organized brigade that essentially being created starting from end of March, early April. So it's pretty fresh unit, and then also supported by some like battalion size or some very small size unit, or maybe like a company from the 28th Brigade. So this is essentially the attacking force. Obviously, not all of the 63rd Brigade attacks, not all of the 35th Brigade attacks, because they still need to defend the front line, and it's pretty long here. So it's essentially kind of created like a battle group from different units that's attacking towards, immediate objective is this town Beryslav here. And then obviously then they probably will go and try to capture the bridge, which probably Russian troops will be fast enough to blow up. But it will also create then problem for the Russian troops as well. Essentially then it prevents them from basically recapturing this whole area. If they blow it up, it will be extremely difficult for them to, in the future, and essentially this probably may mean that Russian troops will be forced to kind of withdraw from this whole area. Even it's not immediately threatened, but essentially there's no bridge. It's difficult to supply. There's another bridge to cross here. So all of this will be probably evacuated by Russian troops as a result of that, if this succeeds. But so far, it's very unclear if this is going to be successful. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and until tomorrow, bye bye.